Welcome, everybody, to another edition of FireHouse Table Talk. I'm your host, Scott Jones, and coming to you through One Brother, One Sister, and, of course, Sober Life Studios supporting this show. And as always, we're going to be talking to the fantastic people at Palm Beach Garden Fire and Rescue and with the chief and some other people. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everybody to please, if you know somebody who has a mental health problem, if you know somebody who is struggling, whether it's depression, anxiety, any kind of disorder at all, or someone who is suffering from addiction, get help. Get help. The stigma, there's no stigma anymore. There's any stigma that's out there. It's stuff that we're putting on it. Everybody understands we all need help sometimes. And with all of the things that are going on out there, waiting until tomorrow could be too late. So just a reminder, you can reach out to us at onebrother1sister.com if you don't know what to do or who to turn to if somebody you love is suffering in any way. That being said, we're moving into our holiday season, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So let me jump right in and bring up our good friend, Chief Keith Breyer from Palm Beach Garden Fire and Rescue. Chief, how are you?
Scott, I'm well. How are you?
You know, I'm doing good, feeling good. It's going into the holidays again, which is always great because it's more connection with family, more connection with friends. And if you could ignore all the stressors, it could really be a great time of year. How about you, pal?
All is well. Listen, it's nice to come together as family and as an organization at the end of the year and, review our wins and losses and just get everybody together. We're all here. Everybody hopefully is happy and healthy as we move into the next year. So it's all good.
Absolutely. And everything is good at the department. Any major changes, or are we doing really well now?
We're expanding like crazy. As you know, we talked about we're putting on an additional station out west of town for some property that we annexed. So hopefully that station will be built a year from this month. But everything's good. I tell you all the time how blessed we are with the personnel that we have and their talents and their skills. More importantly, their passion for public service really shines through. So, we're very blessed. We're fortunate to be supported by a city manager and city council in a city. Like we've said, it's, if you can't succeed under these conditions here at this fire department, there's something really wrong.
You're speaking about the staff and everybody. Always looking for new people, always looking for new talent and things like that. When is a good time? I mean, is this something where you have to, like, right out of high school, decide this is what you want to do, or is this something you could do at any time? And then how would you reach out to find out about how to become involved in the fire service?
So, when somebody gets involved in the fire service is really, I didn't get involved in the fire service or go to fire school until I was 29 years old, right? I had another career before. I wanted to make that career change. But there's some kids that know right away, listen, I want to be a firefighter. So they get out of high school, they go to EMT school, they go to fire school. And we always encourage anybody to say, listen, if you're not sure that you want to do for a career, reach out to your local fire department. One thing we're really good at is mentoring others and bringing people in and saying, listen, come do a ride time with us, see what fire station life is like, see if this career is for you. Because if it is, once you go on that first ride time, you're going to be hooked. So I would recommend to anybody, go to your nearest fire station, talk to some of the firefighters there, go do a ride time and see if this career is for you.
And of course, always looking for good quality people anytime. It doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Absolutely. We do a lot of recruiting. One of the things, and people ask us all the time, what's the most important thing? The most important thing is we have to have people to understand that it is an honor and a privilege to be able to take care of somebody in their time of need, and that public service, we do this for the public service. Yes, we get paid and we get a pension and we get benefits, but those are things that we get because we're willing to serve the public, and that's the most important thing.
No, excuse me, I'm sorry. Talk about service. We've got our friend Casey Klein with us, who is a community risk educator. And before we start talking about what we're going to talk about, Casey, tell us, what exactly does a community risk educator do? And this is just an example of the wide array of jobs that are available within fire rescue, right?
It is. Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it is not a job that people typically think of in the fire service. My job, my full-time role with the city and with the department is I educate and do public outreach. So whether that is general fire safety, CPR, stroke risk awareness, around the holidays, things ramp up, trying to keep people safe with everything that entails. And so my job, if we're scheduling an engine to go out to a school to visit with kids there, that goes through me, and I schedule all those things. So yeah, it's not a typical role that people think of in the fire service, but as Chief Breyer said, the city of Palm Beach Gardens is an extremely progressive and forward-thinking department, and as a result of that, they're willing to take on a full-time person, knowing the importance of connecting with the public and educating and providing outreach to help people keep people safe.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because when I was young, which goes back a long time ago, we used to have firefighters and police officers come to the school on a regular basis for special events and projects. And it seems like, you know, as I got older and my kids were in school, that kind of fell off a little bit. Are we seeing a return to that, or am I wrong that it never really fell off? But are you guys putting a focus on getting into the schools?
Yeah, very much so. It obviously around 2020 with COVID, it did fall off, and we weren't doing much in schools or anywhere for that matter. But yeah, certainly we several times a week we're in a school somewhere connecting with students and with faculty and staff, and we really as a department, that's our goal, is we want to have a relationship with the public. That way, if we are ever needed, which we hope they never do, we've been able to have a moment to connect with them ahead of time, to teach them. There's a ton of value in going to schools, someone getting dressed up in their turnout gear. That way, young kids have an idea. If we ever respond to a fire or an emergency at home, we may look and sound a little bit different, but don't be afraid. We're there to help. So yeah, we spend a lot of time connecting and taking crews and trucks and doing different things out in schools for sure.
Chief, I got to assume that's a particular point of pride when you can influence young kids and teach them things and show up in those community places, right?
Absolutely. You know, Casey serves as that conduit between the public and the emergency response, right? So our hope is that if Casey gets to them first, then either there won't be an emergency response, or if it is, that they'll be able to handle it. So Casey's division last year in 2022, just to show you how much work he does, trained 4,500 people in CPR, right? So he's been in all the schools, and he gets out there, and we talk about, you know, drowning prevention, bike safety. We talk about holiday safety, and that information. And what you said earlier about there was a drop off, unfortunately, for a lot of fire departments, when they're hitting financial difficulties, one of the first things they let go is public education.
Yeah.
And, you know, quite frankly, years ago, we fell upon that 2008, 2009, like everybody else. We lost our program, and we didn't really get that back up full time until Casey came back. He's been killing it ever since, but it's been very well received by the public. They want to see us out there. They want that engagement, and it's important that we get out there and communicate with them and let them know that the things that are there that we have to offer. He really bridges that gap very well.
Well, I can tell you, gentlemen, there are very few things more exciting to a young child than to get up close and personal with a fire truck and actually, you know, see this thing, because it's as a child, this is a thing of legend and myth. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And you know, Casey, that's got to be a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, it's always a ton of fun. We to see the excitement and the joy on the faces of kids as the truck pulls up, or as they come outside and they see it for the first time, and then to be able to get to climb in and sit in the driver's seat, or give a firefighter that's in full turnout gear a high five. It's a fun thing to be a part of for sure.
Now, what color are your trucks at Palm Beach Garden?
They are Gardens green. We have our own, not just green, but they are specifically Gardens green. We have our own version of green that somewhere along the lines, Chief may know more than I do about it. Garden green was created, and here we have it.
Yeah, so years ago, we were working with Pierce Manufacturing, who used to do all our apparatus, and we developed a color green that became Gardens Green. And we've kind of gotten a lot of press on it over the years to be able to do that. But the reason is the studies show that green shows up better in all times of the day, right? Evening,
right,
dusk, dawn, that color kind of shows. You remember years ago they changed a lot of stop signs and informational signs to that color.
right.
So we have our own Gardens Green at the Pierce Manufacturing Company.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I remember when I first started seeing trucks different colors from different cities or municipalities and stuff. You know, I was like, that's all wrong. They're all supposed to be red, and I don't know when that changed, but we see all sorts of colors out there. But yeah, absolutely, that green really does pop, and you can see that coming from a long way away.
Absolutely.
So let's get into, you know, it's great that you're out there doing that stuff with the community. Casey, we appreciate the job you do. Just as important as, because what you do could prevent a lot of the things that the other firefighters have to do if people will listen. So I'd like to talk about that going into the holidays.
Yeah.
And the first thing we're going to talk about is obviously traffic. Traffic has increased from Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. There's drinking and driving. There's big family trips. There's a lot of congestion. How important is it that people are more careful, and more importantly, that they don't rush during those times?
Yeah, I mean, traffic has gotten worse. I think my daily commute has added about 15 minutes each way in the last few weeks. But so much of being alert and paying attention when you're behind the wheel is so important. It's unfortunate how often our crews are responding to with having a major interstate coming through the city. Just the tragedy that's seen on the roadways, either because of people hurrying or rushing. A huge thing is texting and driving. It does not take long for you to take your eyes off the road to read a text or to send a text before you find yourself in a situation where you're hitting someone because you didn't see it coming. And so, and then just the road rage aspect of it, as people get frustrated, and we're always in a hurry. I think we are a society that's always in a rush and always in a hurry. And just slowing down, leaving 5 minutes earlier than you think you might need to. That way you can take your time and not have to feel rushed. All of those things go a long ways and keep you safe as well as others safe that are on the road.
Absolutely. Maintaining your vehicle as well. If you're going to be taking long trips, make sure you check your tires and check those things and make sure your vehicle's working. Chief, is there any kind of ideas on what is really one of the biggest problems? We're going to assume drunk driving is probably the worst of all things, but is it distraction is the number one problem, or is it people who are speeding?
You know, I think probably what we see is more distraction, right? And the biggest culprit of that is going to be texting by far. So people that are either texting or they're reaching for their phone, and they're engaged in something for some reason on their phone while they're doing 80 miles an hour on I-95 or the Turnpike. And I would say that driving while impaired is the second biggest thing. And we tell people, oh, you're wrong. You know, there's absolutely no excuse for somebody to get behind the wheel. There are so many programs that people can do, right? That during, I know, New Year's, there's a lot of the towing companies and taxi cabs and that do it for free. You simply make a phone call. They will come pick you up and they will drop you off at your home. There's just no reason or excuse. And I think, and we might have talked about this in the past, a lot of people don't realize that buzz driving is drunk driving. And just because you're not falling down drunk doesn't mean that you should get behind the wheel of a car. So whenever you're in doubt, take that opportunity to be more safe and just simply call an Uber, a Lyft, or call some of these companies that are doing promotions that'll come out for free. Have a designated driver to be able to do those things. Then once you have your designated driver, hopefully they're not going to be distracted driving when they're in the car with you. But those, I think, are the two biggest things. Speeding and traffic infractions always kind of been around, but I think that those two bigger things outweigh those other things.
Absolutely. I want to make mention too that, being impaired doesn't always mean you went out for a few drinks. It could be medications as well. So please, if you do take medications, prescriptions of any kind, especially if you're taking more than one and there could be some acting going on and different things happening, be very aware of what you're taking and what your limitations. If it says don't operate machinery, don't drive a car. Casey, do we see that a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. So many people take so many medications now, and we're not always aware of how they interact with each other, or if we haven't eaten correctly and then we take it. And so that's something that we don't typically think of. We think I can take this and I'll be fine. And so being aware of all of those situations is huge. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So traffic safety important, and also like the point you made. Listen, there's no rush. Showing up a half hour late is much better than showing up not at all, or not showing up at all. And I think just maybe people need to also recognize it's like, listen, I can handle myself. I'm a great driver and all that stuff. But those jerky moves that you make on the road could scare someone else and have them. Yeah. So think about other people. Don't just think about yourself. Think about what you do causes problems for others as well.
Yes, sir.
Now, we're also talking about, like, with Thanksgiving coming up, and of course, all the holidays, it's really food is a big thing. Thanksgiving, we cook the turkeys, and that's an all-day cook. Whenever there's an all-day cook, there's a possibility of people walking away and leaving things cooking while they're not in the house. That's a dangerous thing, isn't it, Case?
That is the number one reason. That's the number one cause of fires at home is unattended cooking. We think we are all great at multitasking, and I'm gonna get this started on the burner here, and then I'm gonna go fold my laundry and do this and do that, and next thing we know, we forgot those eggs were boiling on the stove, and they explode and end up starting a fire. And it doesn't take much for a small fire to lead to pretty serious consequences, whether that's smoke or fire damage. And so absolutely paying attention, being alert, staying in the kitchen. If you're cooking in the stovetop is the most common cause of fires in the kitchen. Whether that's things are getting too hot and we're not paying attention, or clothing or towels or oven mitts touching the burner that we weren't aware of. So paying attention in the kitchen, staying in there. If you are using the stovetop, even the microwave, it seems like it would be impossible to mess up using a microwave. And we do that as well. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to mean to hit 30 seconds, but instead we've hit 3 minutes. And next thing we know, a lady told me a story the other day. She was putting a muffin in the microwave, meant to do 30 seconds, did 3 minutes, and had kind of walked away and came back. Smoke was coming out of her microwave, and everything else. And so we cannot stress enough the importance of staying in the kitchen when you're cooking and paying attention, especially during the holidays when more and more people are going to be in the house. Kids may be running around, making sure we're keeping a 3-foot area around the stove in the range where kids aren't in there running around. They're not going to pull the pot off on themselves and burn themselves. And yeah, when you're cooking something all day, some people, they really throw down for Thanksgiving, and they've got 4 things cooking on there. They've got the 3 crock pots going on the side and the smoker going out back. And it's easy to miss and forget one of those 18 things that you've got going on at the same time.
So definitely stay mindful of everything you're doing. I like that about pulling the pots off. Remember to keep your handles not sticking out on your pot. Turn them towards the counter so that if you walk by, you're not going to catch it on your shirt, or a kid's not going to grab it or something. Speaking of experience, getting gravy all down the side of me one year because I had the handle sticking out and I walked right. Luckily, I wasn't hurt because it wasn't hot yet, but it could have been bad. Chief, you might remember Ron Popeil, the guy who invented all those crazy Ronco products. on TV, and he created these new wave ovens and these other things and the big campaign was set it and forget it.
Yep.
And that's like a really bad message for any kind of cooking, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You don't want to ever set anything and forget it when it comes to cooking. Any kind of heat source for any length of time, we have to be there. You have to be diligent. You have to watch. And one of the other things is that you should understand basic things, that if your pot catches on fire, slide it off the burner, cover it. Make sure that you have a working fire extinguisher that's in your kitchen, and make sure you have smoke detectors in your house. So if you do step away early enough, they're going to go ahead and notify you and alert you. The tragic thing that we see all the time, almost every holiday season, is that everybody gets together. It's a joyous time. And when somebody gets hurt or somebody's house catches on fire, it takes that whole holiday spirit and turns it into a tragedy that will carry, for people for years and years. So we want people to get together. We want them to have fun, and we want them to enjoy themselves. But more importantly, take the steps to keep yourself, your family, and your home safe.
Very good point. Just to remind people, fire extinguishers are not hard to get. You don't need the big ones that hang on the wall at the schools or anything like that. They're small ones that go in the kitchen. And that one small fire extinguisher could be the difference between a small incident on your stove or losing your whole home, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
very easy.
A piece of that, Scott, is if you do have them, making sure if it's sat underneath that kitchen sink for 4 years and never been touched, it's probably time to replace it.
How often is it that you should replace it? Just if you're buying them at Walmart or something.
Sure, sure. Well, so part of it is we would always suggest buying one that has a pressure gauge. That way you know whether it's even pressurized or not. Because now they're selling those they're almost aerosol cans. And with that, you never know if it's pressurized or not, or if there's anything in there. If people have them and once or twice a year they're taking them, we suggest turning them upside down, taking a rubber mallet, hit it on the bottom a couple times. Keep those chemicals that are in there from settling all the way to the bottom. But it's probably a good idea every 4 or 5 years to just go ahead and replace them. You can buy them at any hardware store, a lot of department stores, and they're not going to set you back a whole lot of money, and it's worth that peace of mind.
Now, another big tradition that's become quite popular now is deep fried turkeys. And I see these fryers everywhere. I was at the store the other day, saw some guy picking one up, and he was talking to his wife, and he's saying, how hard could it be? As you're saying, as he was putting it into his thing. And I'm like, there's a lot of things you need to know. I think the number one thing is the appropriate amount of space to have. Isn't that right, Case?
Yeah, they do make delicious turkey if you do it right.
If you do it right, absolutely.
But it is something you got to know what you're doing. You got to pay attention. It takes some preparation. It's not as simple as just throwing it in the oven like we typically do. So you want to make sure it's on a flat surface with nothing within 10 feet that's flammable. A huge issue is the turkey has to be completely thawed. If any part of that turkey is frozen, that's when we see those almost explosions happening where people put a partially frozen turkey into a pot of hot oil, and it overflows the pot. So there are several preparations to take ahead of time. Fill the pot with water before you put the turkey in to see how much oil do I need to put into this pot. Test it with water, because the last thing you want is extremely hot oil, and then you put this turkey in there and the pot overflows because you didn't guesstimate correctly how much oil should be in there. And so
then those oils are flammable as well. If they start, it's not just hot oil.
Absolutely, they're flammable. They're hot. It's extremely dangerous if you take it lightly and you don't know what you're doing. And when you're doing it, always make sure you have a fire extinguisher on hand right there. Even if you think you know what you're doing, have a fire extinguisher there in case things do get out of hand. You're ready to take care of it.
The frozen thing is, when you say thawed, completely inside, outside, any of that stuff. Because when these things go south, this usually is major injury, not minor injury when these things go wrong.
Major.
Chief, we've seen this over the years, haven't we, Chief?
Oh yeah, and one of the other thing is don't fry a turkey in your garage. Don't fry it in your house. We've seen both of those things, and we've seen where people are doing it outside, and kids are outside in the backyard having a football game near this thing, and we've seen people that have run into that and get significantly burnt. You have to do this in an area. You got to make sure the kids, and there's no activity by that. Make sure somebody stays with it, because that oil by nature, once it gets on your skin, it adheres to your skin. It's hard to wipe that off and to stop that burning process. So burns from grease like that are nasty burns.
Absolutely, very painful. I want to remind everybody as well that don't get lulled into a false sense of security because you're using an air fryer, because that still generates a great deal of heat and needs to be paid attention to. And that also cannot be done in a closed area. You got to move that out a little bit, give it room to breathe. Air fryers can get very hot, but the turkey fryers, big. Yeah, you're right though. If you do it right, it's a fantastic turkey.
Yeah.
But when you do it wrong, it's just disaster.
Yeah, all the way around.
So we get through, and we've got our cooking done, we have our family, and we have a great time. And now it comes to, I'm not going to talk about Black Friday because that's a nightmare to me. I hide under the covers. I don't go anywhere. But then people start putting out Christmas lights. Now we're starting to move into Christmas. And here's the biggest problem that I see is everybody with 3,000 extension cords run across their lawn in rain, snow, good weather, dry grass. I mean, there's 100 different ways all this can go wrong. What is the proper way to run lights at a house, Casey?
So the first thing we would suggest, whether you're buying lights or anything that you're going to plug in, make sure it has a label on there that is from, it has been tested in a qualified laboratory, whether that is Underwriters Laboratory or ETL, even things as small as Christmas lights. Make sure some agency has ran through those, tested them to make sure that they're okay. So that's a huge piece of it. We always would suggest using a surge protector over a power strip. And then
what is the difference between the two? Because most people think they're the same thing.
A surge protector, if it experiences a surge of electricity that's plugged into the wall, it will shut down all of the outlets on that surge protector, and everything that's plugged into that will then be shut off. Where a power strip, it's essentially an extension cord with 4, 6, or 8, however many outlets. That doesn't really offer any protection. It's just turning that one outlet into multiple outlets.
Gotcha.
Those can be okay if we're plugging really small, low voltage things into them. So never ever plug those into one another. Don't plug a surge protector or a power strip into a wall and then plug another power strip into that power strip to turn that one outlet now into 10 or 12 outlets.
But unfortunately, that's the way
people do it.
I grew up. That's how my father taught me.
People do it.
You got one outlet, and somehow you found a way to generate 58 different lines of electricity.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the right lesson. So now if you are limited, I mean, I guess people maybe need to realize there's only so much you can do safely. And then after that, it's no longer safe. Exactly. Is that kind of what we're saying here?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's, I get it. Like everyone wants to decorate their home for the holidays and have their lights and their little villages or whatever it is that they like to put out. But it's not worth doing it at the risk of putting your family or yourself in danger.
There are strings of lights that you can plug one into the next string and the strings go, but it will tell you how many lights should be on that string. They say you could do that 3-4 times and then that's it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between indoor and outdoor lights. And I think people think, well, it's not really a difference, but there is a difference, isn't there?
There is. Yes, sir. Yeah. They have different levels of electricity that are used, different protections inside and outside. And so again, first, making sure it's been tested in a laboratory, and then 2, use the right and appropriate lights for whatever setting that you're looking to use them in.
Excellent. Yeah, Chief, you see those lights all the time and stuff. Does it make you crazy sometimes when you drive by and you know that it's probably not a safe setup?
Yeah, and you know what's funny is that if people would just follow the manufacturer's recommendations for safety, and it's usually the first thing in the directions, it keeps you safe. And we know it all, so we bypass that. But that's why you don't use outside lights or inside lights on the outside, right? That's why, Casey mentioned, if you're going to use something, a surge protector, and most times surge protectors have that little switch or will have lights on it, so we'll differentiate that they have surge protection. But we're not electricians, but yet we're acting as electricians when we're plugging this into that and overloading those circuits. And then we get these extension cords, we used to call them zip cords, those brown extension cords that are really not able to handle a lot. And what are we doing? We're running them under carpets, right? And placing carpets and stuff or under furniture that increase that heating and the breakdown of that material that are all going to lend to a fire. So it really comes down to just following the manufacturer's recommendation. When Casey talked about being UL listed or factory mutual or any of that, those are all tested for safety based on those recommendations, and you keep your family so much safer. And then couple that with working smoke detectors, right? And unplugging it at the end of the night and not leaving it all night long will really help a long way in keeping your family safe.
Yeah.
Now, I've been in circumstances where I've loaded up on an extension cord and I felt the extension cord get warm. That's not a good sign, is it?
It is really not. It is. That means that whole thing is being overloaded. Now, that heat that you feel doubles when you put a carpet over top of it. And what happens is eventually it could break down that outside coating. Those wires can fault. And that's why we don't want anybody running wires under carpet, furniture, or wrapping them. When you take it and wrap it 10 times around the leg of something because you don't want it out, it increases that resistance and that heat that breaks down that. So, and it damages the wires on the inside. So, it's electricity and not properly managed, it becomes dangerous.
Absolutely. I also want to mention that we talked about the indoor and outdoor. There's a difference between the lights. Make sure if you're outdoors, use outdoor lights. On your porch, if you have an exposed porch, that's not indoors. So even though it's out of the elements, there's still enough exposure to the elements that it's not safe. So any outdoor, even if it's protected from the rain, still shouldn't be used for indoor lights, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Now, how about trees? I was always a traditional, you got to have a real tree kind of guy until I got my first artificial tree. Then I realized this is heaven. And it's pre-lit and it's fiber optic and all that stuff. But caring for real trees and hanging lights on them, Casey, there's maintenance that goes with that. You don't just put that up and let it sit there for weeks and weeks, right?
Please do not do that. That is, there's a lot more maintenance to it than people think. One, even how, and some people like to cut their own tree, which is fine, but even cutting it at the right angle to make sure you always need to cut it. That way the tree will receive water a little easier. Christmas trees need to be watered every day. They are a living tree that you have just cut down that you're putting into your home. And as they die, they become extremely dry and become an extreme fire hazard. A tree that's dry can go up in as quick as 10 seconds. And before you know it, your entire living room or whatever room it's set up in is up in flames and you had no clue what happened. So watering them every day, putting our lights on correctly, make sure we're not overloading, again, the lights that are on the tree. About a third of Christmas tree fires are electrical issues. And so if we have an electrical issue with a dry tree, that's a formula for a disaster. So making sure we're doing all of those things, keeping Candles are a huge issue during this time of year. November and Thanksgiving, cooking is the focus. Thanksgiving is the one day of cooking fires. December is the one month as far as candle fires. And a huge piece of that, I was somewhere yesterday doing some educating, and people were talking about how they used to hang candles on real Christmas trees, which is insane to think about that people used to do that.
Yeah.
But making sure we're keeping, if we have a real Christmas tree, keeping candles and live flames away from that, keeping those candles away from drapes and different things. And even the things that we're putting on our tree, if we're using decorations on it, getting things that are flame retardant or non-flammable that we put on there to help keep everything at less risk as possible. And then once that tree becomes dry and brittle, you've got to get it out of the house. Some people, a lot of times issues will come because, well, Christmas comes and goes, and we're now in the second week of January and we still have our Christmas tree set up in the living room. And it's been sitting there for 6 or 8 weeks. And that tree is a huge fire hazard. So as soon as it's time, get that thing out of there to make sure we're protecting ourselves and our family.
And even if you're doing proper maintenance, at a certain point in time, it's going to dry out. You cannot keep it alive in perpetuity.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So, Chief, we still seeing these calls from real trees going up?
Absolutely. We see them every year. And you'll read about it. I mean, all over, if you watch the nightly news, you'll talk about these tragedies where people had their homes catch on fire, and now their toys and their presents for the kids were all burnt out, and they're up and they're doing, a charity drive to try to get these poor kids presents for Christmas. You see it every year, regardless of how much education. And I don't even know what the statistical data is. Do we see less than we did? I don't even know, but it seems like every year you hear something about somebody who tragically their house burnt down during Christmas or right before, and usually it's an electrical issue that was the cause.
Casey, you had mentioned something a moment ago about, or maybe it was you, Chief, about not leaving the lights on all night unattended, the outdoor lights. I know people like to have those things, but it's much safer not to have those things burning at 4 a.m. when nobody's really paying attention, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anytime it's going to stay plugged into an energy source, there's always going to be a possibility that something could get overloaded or something could happen. It is way more safer. Your tree on the inside before you go to bed, unplug it. And the same thing with your outside lights. Just simply unplug them before you go to bed. Like you said, nobody's looking at your lights at 4 a.m.
And I'm going to ask a personal favor from my neighbors to tie their big blow-up snowman down better, because each year he ends up in my front yard. It just blows on over. But before we run out of time, I want to get to something else. As these holidays come in, we're getting into the winter months, which, Florida calling it winter months is really just kind of it's a misnomer, I know. But we do have days that get down into the 50s and even into the 40s or evenings. And there's a lot of people like me who in 12 years have not turned on my heat in my house once, but they go out and they buy space heaters. And, first of all, they're not practiced at using them because they might only pull them out twice a year or 3 times a year. But these things are very, very dangerous, aren't they, Casey?
They are, and they certainly can be. And again, just like we've said with lights or anything else that we're plugging in, only buy a space heater that's, again, been tested in a laboratory. Per those manufacturer recommendations. Sometimes we're always concerned about getting the best deal, and we don't realize we're buying something that could be a fire hazard just to save $10. So pay attention when you're buying something, what you're buying. Does it have that label on there that it's been tested to make sure it's safe? And then 2, make sure you get one that if it gets tipped over or knocked over, it has an automatic shutoff on it. Only use it when you're in the room. Those aren't things that are made to be, most of them aren't things that are made to be run all day long. It's not a furnace.
Yeah.
So you pay attention when we're using it. Make sure it's away from curtains and drapes or couches or different things that could be flammable. And make sure we're not putting clothes or decorations or different things on top of them, because that is setting ourselves up for a bad situation as well. So yeah, they can be great, but they also, if you're not paying attention and using it as Chief said, per the manufacturer's recommendations, can set yourself up for a pretty tragic situation.
You know, Chief, whether it's lights or trees or space heaters or turkey fryers or basic ovens, everything has a possibility of having a danger if you don't use them properly. Is that kind of the message here? Whatever you do, make sure you're doing it per the specs.
Absolutely. It comes down to reasonable precautions, right? And a reasonable precaution is simply following the manufacturer's recommendations. They're there for a reason. They're there to keep people safe. That's how they've been tested. And that's reasonable. We're not asking anybody to go above and beyond. All we're asking them to do is just simply follow the manufacturer's recommendations. And you know what it is? Make sure you're getting this ahead of time. So you're reading that. So if you have to run out and get something, or you have to make those changes, because you know how we are, we're going to read it. And I'm not going to Home Depot at 11 o'clock at night. So what are we going to do? We're just going to kind of rig it up anyway. And that's where issues and problems. Most of these things, the overwhelming majority of the time, if you follow the manufacturer's recommendations, you're going to ensure that yourself and your family and your property are safe.
Gentlemen, I can only imagine in most of these disasters that might happen, it's the homeowners always standing there saying, well, I didn't think it was a problem, or I didn't think it would happen to me. Nobody's sitting there saying, I knew I was taking a risk. Everybody really believes that it's not going to happen to them. It's like, yeah, I can plug an extra thing in here because really nothing's going to happen. Yeah. And people have to start believing in what can happen. Don't they? I mean, it's.
Yeah, we're not immune. We're not immune to those things. Go ahead,
right.
Chief.
I think that's human nature, right? We all think it's going to happen to somebody else. You know, several years ago, when I was doing, you know, probably 15 years ago, when I was doing fire investigations, we had, during cold weather, fireplace. And the fire started in the fireplace. And when I spoke to the woman, I said, when was the last time it was maintenanced and cleaned? And she goes, I've been here 10 years. We've never maintenanced or cleaned this. So again, following those general safety precautions make a big difference. And it does happen. And we hope that it doesn't happen to you, but I think you're burying your head in the sand just to think that it's not going to happen to you. You know, these things happen. They're going to happen to somebody, and it could certainly be you.
Absolutely. If you need convincing, folks, if you follow the recommendations, follow directions, and do proper maintenance on whether it is a chimney or a vent over your oven, and having that checked once in a while. And, you know, running a check on your lights. Check your lights before you put them up. Make sure there's no frayed, things like that. It's going to extend the life of the product that you're using. It's going to be more efficient for you. So if you're not going to do it for safety, do it for savings. You're going to save money by taking care of things a little bit better. Yeah. But gentlemen, you know, we're going into the holidays. And I hope you guys have happy, good holidays, along with everyone else at Palm Beach Garden Fire and Rescue. You guys are the highest of quality people and doing a great job, and we all appreciate what you do. Casey, any thoughts for the holidays you'd like to share with everybody out there?
I keep going back to these labels. As we think about getting gifts for whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah, a huge thing we're seeing are these electric scooters and e-bikes.
Yeah.
And we aren't experiencing a ton of it here, but all over the country, we are seeing fire after fire start from people buying these aftermarket batteries or damaging a battery and not replacing it. If you are buying a loved one anything that has any sort of lithium-ion battery, make sure, again, it has a label on it that it's been tested and approved. Don't overcharge them. Don't use them if the battery's been damaged. Charge it outside if possible, because we don't want to see a holiday ruined, and we don't want to see anyone hurt or injured just to charge some battery for a toy or for a bike. And so I would encourage people to do that. And you mentioned it earlier before we got started, but look out for one another during this time of year. The holidays are great for so many people, but they're also really challenging for a lot of others that are maybe a difficult reminder, or they don't have a lot of friends or family around. So be intentional, look out for your neighbor, care for one another. And I think those are always good things to do.
Thank you, Casey. And the job you do is a great job. We do appreciate you and your passion for getting this information out there and taking care of our communities.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Chief, holiday message you'd like to send out to everybody?
Well, we want to wish everybody a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season. We again want to thank you and Karen for everything that you do for first responders, for everything that you do for the community. We wish you guys a happy, healthy, safe holiday season. We really enjoy our time with you and helping us get our message out. It's much appreciated. But I don't think that people realize how much that you and Karen and ATC really do, One Brother, One Sister, do for the first responder community. It is much appreciated. For me as a fire chief, we've reached out from you guys from time to time, and you have never let us down. Simply one phone call, and 5 minutes later, I get a phone call back. So other fire departments, fire chiefs, anybody that's responsible for first responders, I would recommend that, when they're looking for a place to start, that they pick up the phone and call you, because I know for sure that you guys will make sure that their personnel are taken care of and they get to the right place. You guys truly care about what you do, and that's rarely seen today. So from our department to you guys, we appreciate everything that you do all year long.
I think that's why there's such, and I appreciate the message. That's why there's such good synergy between us, because you care so much about what you do, and more importantly, you care about the people that work with you and work for you, and of course caring for the community as well. So for Palm Beach Garden Fire and Rescue, Chief Breyer, Casey Klein, and all of the members of Palm Beach Garden Fire and Rescue, happy holidays to everybody. Thank you for joining us. One Brother, One Sister. We're here if you need us as well. If you got someone who needs help, don't wait. Ask for help today. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time right here on FireHouse Table Talk.